My name is Margaret Thompson, but everyone calls me Maggie. I'm 68 years old, and I live in a small suburb outside of Columbus, Ohio. People often ask me how I managed to raise 4 children on my own, and honestly, for years I didn't have a good answer. I was just surviving, putting one foot in front of the other. But now, looking back after all these years, I can finally see the whole picture, and I'd like to share it with you today. This is a story about heartbreak, yes, but it's also about discovering strength I didn't know I had. It's about my 4 incredible kids who deserved better than what happened to them. And it's about how sometimes the worst thing that happens to you can lead you to become the person you were always meant to be. I want to be honest with you from the start. This isn't an easy story to tell. There were years when I was so angry, so hurt, that I could barely breathe. But I'm grateful now for where that journey took me. So let me take you back to where it all began. I met Robert in 1975. I was 20 years old, working as a receptionist at a dental office in Cleveland. He came in for a cleaning, and he had this smile that just lit up the room. We started dating that summer, and by Christmas, he'd proposed. Looking back, maybe we rushed into things, but I was young and in love, and I thought I knew exactly how my life would unfold. We got married in June of 1976. It was a small wedding at my parents' church. Nothing fancy, but it was beautiful to me. We moved into a tiny apartment on the east side, and I remember thinking I was the luckiest girl in the world. Robert worked in construction, and I kept working at the dental office for a couple more years. We were saving up for a house, planning our future. Our first daughter, Jennifer, was born in 1978. I was 23 years old and I had no idea what I was doing, but the moment they put her in my arms, something inside me just clicked. I quit my job to stay home with her, which was normal back then. Most of my friends did the same thing. Robert was making decent money, and we agreed that I should be home with the babies. Then came Michael in 1980, Sarah in 1982, and little Katie in 1984. 4 kids in 6 years. Our house was absolute chaos, but it was the good kind of chaos, you know? Sticky hands and loud laughter and toys everywhere. I barely slept for about a decade, but I was happy. At least I thought I was. Robert worked long hours. Construction was demanding, especially in Ohio with the weather. He'd leave before dawn and come home after dark. I understood. We needed the income, and he was providing for his family. That's what men did back then, but somewhere in those years we started drifting apart. We weren't talking much anymore. When he came home, he was tired. I was tired. The romance had faded into routine. I noticed little things changing around 1989. He was working even longer hours. He seemed distant, distracted. When I'd try to talk to him, really talk, he'd brush me off or say he was too exhausted. I told myself it was just a phase. Every marriage goes through rough patches, right? You just push through and things get better. I was wrong. It was October 17th, 1991. I remember the date because it was 2 days before Katie's 7th birthday. I was in the kitchen making her birthday cake from scratch chocolate with vanilla frosting, her favorite. Jennifer was 15 and helping me. Michael was 11, playing with his Nintendo in the living room. Sarah was 9, doing homework at the kitchen table. Katie was running around the house singing at the top of her lungs like she always did. Robert came home early, which was unusual. It was only 4 in the afternoon. I heard his truck pull into the driveway, and I remember smiling because I thought maybe he'd taken off early to spend time with us before Katie's birthday. But when he walked in, I knew immediately something was wrong. His face was grey and he couldn't look at me. He asked if we could talk. Alone. I sent the kids upstairs and my heart was pounding so hard I thought I might be sick. We sat down at the kitchen table and he just said it. No build-up, no explanation. He said he was leaving. He said he'd met someone else, someone from work, and he was moving in with her. He said he was sorry, but he couldn't do this anymore. I sat there in complete silence. I couldn't process what he was saying. This was my husband, the father of my children. We'd been together for 16 years. How could he just leave? I asked him if we could try counseling, if we could work on things. He said no. He said his mind was made up. He'd already moved most of his stuff out to a storage unit. He'd been planning this. Then he stood up and walked out. Just like that, he got in his truck and drove away. I stood at the window watching his taillights disappear down the street, and I realized that my entire life had just imploded in the span of 10 minutes. The kids came downstairs asking what was wrong. I had to tell them their father had left. I had to watch their faces crumble. Jennifer started crying. Michael got very quiet and angry. Sarah kept asking if it was her fault. And Katie, my sweet little Katie, just kept saying that Daddy would come back, that he promised to be at her birthday party. He didn't come to her birthday party. He didn't call. 2 days after he left, my 7-year-old daughter had her birthday, and her father didn't even acknowledge it. That's when I realized the man I married was gone. This person who could hurt his children like that was a stranger to me. I'm not going to sugarcoat this part. That first year was absolute hell. I had 4 kids, no job, no recent work experience, and a mortgage I couldn't pay. Robert had promised he'd send child support, but the checks were irregular and never enough. I called him over and over, begging him to help, to at least talk to his children. Sometimes he'd answer and make excuses. Most of the time he didn't answer at all. I had about $3,000 in our savings account. That was it. That was all the money I had to feed 4 children and keep a roof over our heads. I spent the first few weeks in a state of panic. I couldn't eat. I couldn't sleep. I'd lie in bed at night calculating numbers in my head, trying to figure out how to make everything work. And the math never added up. The kids were struggling too. Jennifer, my oldest, became almost parentified. She'd help with her younger siblings without me even asking. She'd make sandwiches for their lunches and help Katie with her homework. She was 15 years old and she'd lost her childhood overnight. That guilt still sits with me. Michael became angry. He was furious at his father, and that anger spilled out everywhere. His grades dropped. He got in trouble at school for fighting. I didn't know how to help him because I was barely holding myself together. Sarah withdrew completely. She'd always been my quiet, sensitive one, and she just retreated into herself. She stopped talking about her feelings. She'd just say she was fine, even when I could see she was falling apart. And Katie kept asking when Daddy was coming home, every single day for months. It broke my heart every single time. I applied for every job I could find, but I hadn't worked in over a decade, and my skills were outdated. I didn't know how to use computers. I had no college degree. I was a 36-year-old woman with a gap in her resume and 4 kids who needed me home. Nobody wanted to hire me. We were eating a lot of pasta and rice. I'd buy the cheapest groceries I could find. I stopped buying anything that wasn't absolutely necessary. No new clothes, no extras, nothing. I cut every single expense I could think of. We were hanging on by our fingernails. My parents helped when they could, but they were retired and on a fixed income themselves. I hated asking them for money. My pride was still intact back then, barely. I didn't want anyone to know how bad things had gotten. I'd smile at church on Sundays and pretend everything was fine. I was so good at pretending. About 6 months after Robert left, I got a notice from the bank. We were going into foreclosure. I'd missed 3 mortgage payments. I was going to lose the house where my children had grown up, the house where all their memories were. I sat on the bathroom floor that night and cried harder than I'd ever cried in my life. I couldn't see any way forward. That's when my friend Carol knocked on my door. Carol lived 2 streets over, and she'd noticed I wasn't doing well. I'd been avoiding people, avoiding questions. But Carol was persistent. She sat me down and made me tell her everything. And when I was done, she looked at me and said something I'll never forget. She said, "Maggie, you can either let this destroy you, or you can decide right now that you're going to fight. Your kids need you to fight." She was right. I'd been so consumed by grief and fear that I'd forgotten the most important thing. My children needed a mother who was present, who was strong, who could show them that we were going to be okay. Even if I didn't believe it yet, I had to act like I did. Carol helped me find a job as a cashier at the local grocery store. It wasn't much minimum wage with terrible hours, but it was something. I worked evenings and weekends so Jennifer could watch the younger ones. It wasn't ideal, but it was what we had to do. Then I did something I'd been too proud to do before. I applied for government assistance, food stamps, Medicaid for the kids, every program I qualified for. I'd been raised to believe that asking for help was shameful, that it meant you'd failed. But I realized that pride wasn't going to feed my children. Those programs saved us. They gave us just enough breathing room to survive. I also went to the courthouse and filed for child support enforcement. Robert had been dodging his responsibilities, but the state could garnish his wages. It took months, but eventually his checks started coming regularly. It still wasn't much, but it was steady, and that steadiness made all the difference. Slowly, very slowly, things started to stabilize. We didn't lose the house. I negotiated a payment plan with the bank, and my parents helped me catch up. We had food on the table. The bills were getting paid mostly. We were surviving. Around the 2-year mark, something shifted in me. I realized I'd been living in survival mode for so long that I'd forgotten who I was. I was just the mum who got left, or the single mother struggling. But I used to be Maggie. I used to have dreams and interests and a personality beyond my circumstances. I started taking care of myself again. Small things at first. I'd put on makeup even when I wasn't going anywhere. I'd take a walk around the block after the kids went to bed. I'd read books again, something I'd loved but had abandoned. I started finding these little moments of peace and joy, and I'd hold on to them like lifelines. I also enrolled in a community college program. They had evening classes for adult learners, and I started taking courses in office administration. It was terrifying at first. I was in classes with people half my age, learning how to use computers and software programs. But I worked harder than anyone else there because I had to. This was my ticket to a better job, a better life for my kids. It took me 3 years taking classes part-time while working full-time, but I earned my associate degree. When I walked across that stage in 1996, all 4 of my kids were in the audience cheering for me. Jennifer was 20, starting college herself. Michael was 16 and had turned his anger into drive. He was doing better in school, playing basketball. Sarah was 14 and had started coming out of her shell. And Katie was 12, My baby who wasn't a baby anymore. That diploma meant more to me than my wedding ring ever did. It represented everything I'd overcome. It represented the person I'd become. With that degree, I got a job as an administrative assistant at a small insurance company. The pay was better, the hours were regular, and I had benefits. Real health insurance for the first time in years. We weren't wealthy by any means, but we were stable. We were okay. Watching my children grow up and succeed despite everything became my greatest source of pride. Jennifer graduated from Ohio State University and became a teacher. She's married now with 2 kids of her own, and she's an incredible mother. She learned resilience from those hard years, and it made her stronger. Michael joined the Army right after high school. It gave him structure and purpose, and it channeled all that anger into something positive. He served for 8 years, and now he works as a contractor. He's married to a wonderful woman, and they have a son. He calls me every Sunday without fail. Sarah became a social worker. She helps families in crisis, and I think her own experience drove her to that career. She wanted to help people the way she wished someone had helped us. She's doing beautiful work, and I'm so proud of her. Katie is my wild child. She became an artist, a painter. She's the only one who really talks about her father. She says she forgave him years ago, not for him, but for herself. She's got a wisdom about her that I envy sometimes. She's the one who pushed me to tell this story, actually. As for Robert, I haven't spoken to him in over 15 years. He has minimal contact with the kids. He missed so much of their lives. Graduations, weddings, grandchildren being born. I used to be angry about that, but now I just feel sad for him. He chose to walk away from the most precious thing in the world, and you can't get those years back. If someone had told me back in 1991 that I'd be sitting here today, happy and at peace, I wouldn't have believed them. When you're in the darkest moment of your life, you can't imagine that light will ever come back. But it does, slowly, painfully slowly sometimes. But it comes. I learned that strength isn't something you either have or you don't. It's something you build piece by piece, decision by decision. Every morning I got out of bed when I wanted to stay under the covers. That was strength. Every job application I filled out, every class I took, every meal I scraped together, that was strength. It accumulates over time until one day you look back and realize you've climbed a mountain you didn't think you could climb. I learned that asking for help isn't weakness, it's wisdom. We're not meant to do everything alone. Those programs that helped us, my friend Carol, my parents, the teachers who looked out for my kids, they were all part of our village. And I've tried to pay that forward. I volunteer now at a women's shelter, helping other women who are starting over because someone helped me. And that matters. I learned that your children are more resilient than you think. I worried so much that I'd damaged them, that they'd be scarred forever by what happened. And yes, it affected them, but they're also stronger and more compassionate because of it. They learned early that life isn't always fair, but you can still choose how you respond to that unfairness. Most importantly, I learned that I didn't need Robert to be complete. For so many years, my identity was wrapped up in being a wife, in being part of a couple. When he left, I thought I'd lost myself, but what I really did was find myself. I discovered that I was capable and strong and resourceful. I discovered that I could provide for my family, that I could go back to school, that I could build a life on my own terms. If you're watching this and you're going through something similar, I want you to know something. You're going to survive this. It doesn't feel like it right now, Right now, it feels like the world has ended, but you're stronger than you know. Take it one day at a time. Some days, take it 1 hour at a time. Do the next right thing, whatever that is. Feed your kids. Get out of bed. Apply for that job. Go to that class. Ask for help when you need it. String together enough of those small victories, and eventually you'll look up and realize you've made it through. Your children will be okay. Love them, be present with them, show them what resilience looks like. They're learning from you every single day, even when you think you're failing, especially when you think you're failing. And know this, the person who walked away, who gave up on you and your family, that's on them. That's not a reflection of your worth. You are worthy of love and respect and partnership. Robert's failure to see that was his loss, not mine. It took me years to believe that, but I believe it now, with everything in me. I'm 68 years old now. I've been on my own for over 30 years. I have 4 successful children, 7 grandchildren, and a life I'm genuinely proud of. I own my home outright. I volunteer, I take trips, I have friends and hobbies and joy. The life I have now is better than the life I thought I wanted back in 1991. Sometimes the worst thing that happens to you cracks you open just enough to let the light in. You get to decide what grows in that space. I decided to grow strength, resilience, and compassion, and that made all the difference. Thank you for listening to my story. I hope it helps someone out there who needs to hear it. You're going to make it through. I promise you that. And one day, you'll tell your own story of survival, and someone else will be inspired by it. Just like I hope you've been inspired by mine. You're stronger than you think. You're braver than you believe. And you're going to be okay.